All right, now this is a depiction that I put together on a Miro board. And this is in conjunction with some circular design sprints that will be coming up here soon. And the example that I will be giving you today is tied to microplastics. And the goal here is to give you a very brief description of what it looks like, how the plastics are actually going ahead and being created, and then what that process looks like. And we'll concentrate on 3 products that are primarily the culprits tied to microplastics. And I'd like to go ahead and show you the effect of all of this. So this is our first attempt at working with a Miro board here and doing a live stream. So of course we start with the actual petroleum extraction. So we have petroleum is drilled and transported to a refinery. Make it a little bit bigger. And we have 2 components that are main focus, taking from the petroleum to create the plastic, and that would be ethylene and propylene. Sorry, this is not my specialty. Apologies for that. I have trouble enough with simple names like Mary and Joe. Let's move on. Then we go ahead and put these components into the reactor. And that leads us to the next stop. Let's move on. And this kind of got mixed through, but that's fine. We're going to go ahead and freestyle it. So we have, let's move that one to the side. We have what's called fluff, and the fluff is the powdered material or the polymer that's created, and it kind of looks like laundry detergent. And then after that, we go ahead and create a fluff cocktail. And basically what we're doing here is putting together the plastic in a form where we can go ahead and create pellets, and we use an extruder for this process. And we're almost finished with our lesson for today. And then we end up with the pellets. Now, so far so good. This seems pretty clear cut, but now this is where it really starts getting interesting, folks. So let me scale out. So did you know that very often we will go ahead and fill our toy or our toy bears or whatever they might, stuffed animals, with these plastic pellets? Now we think, oh, that's great. That would be a very efficient way. And then of course you could rattle the stuffed bear and you could hear the click clack and you think, isn't that great? But what we don't think about is some of the undue effects that take place by putting plastic pellets into stuffed animals. So very often they're handed over to dogs, and the dogs think it's great, and so they hear the noise and they want to go ahead and chew at it. And so how long is that stuffed animal going to stick around? So I ask you a question now. If a stuffed dog is going to gnarl away at a stuffed, is a dog going to go ahead and gnarl away at a stuffed animal? Do you think that little babies are going to gnarl away at these stuffed animals as well? So do we feel comfortable about leaving a situation where plastic is actually put into various toys like this? Again, I just want to go ahead and put that in as food for thought. So let's go ahead and move on. Let me go ahead and move this to this side. So we have the pellets, and we go ahead and transform them to, or transport them, better said, to a warehouse. Once we've gone ahead and, of course, within that transport, we're creating all kinds of emissions. We see within the various parts of this process, we have emissions all over the place. So let's go back. We have our warehouse. Let's move on. And then we get to our manufacturing, where, of course, we have more emissions being produced. But again, I'd like to go ahead and concentrate. Let's see how this one looks. Yeah, it looks all right. Let's concentrate on the three elements that are the major culprits of microplastics, those being tires, cosmetics, and textiles. So I'd say let's go ahead and start from top to bottom. And this is probably one of those factoids that most people are not aware of, that tires are one of the major culprits in creating microplastic. And if you think about how tires are used, it should be a no-brainer. In other words, the tires are running on a road, as you can see, and the wear and tear is creating the microplastic. And I certainly fell into the group that didn't realize that we're using plastics to make tires. I thought it was made out of rubber. No, we're actually using plastics. So what happens is, let's go ahead and follow this path. So we have the tires, they're on the road, and of course it rains. So what happens to that microplastic that was washed away from the roads? Yes, it ends up in our lakes and rivers. And of course, the lakes and rivers are in continuous motion. And if anybody's familiar with general geography, a lake, sorry, let's go look at it from a river perspective. A river does not stay static. The river keeps on moving and eventually ends up in some sort of sea. And of course, that's where the microplastics are being eaten by fish and other living beings within our oceans. And that's how the tires go ahead and contribute to the microplastics to be found within our oceans. But that's only one of our problems. Let's go ahead and move on to the next one, which would be cosmetics. Let me go ahead and zoom in here. And you might think, well, where does microplastic actually come from cosmetics? We have what's called microbeads, and it's a major component, or it has been a major component of cosmetics for a number of years. There's a big effort to actually go ahead and eliminate them. There are laws coming in the EU where people will go ahead and say, oh, well, we have a law against that, so we don't have to worry about it anymore. Well, of course, that's assuming that anything that we ever use in the EU is coming from the EU, for starters. Number two, just because we in the EU have solved this problem doesn't mean that the rest of the world has the problem solved. And so we should not be perhaps so sanctimonious that we're able to solve the problem in Europe. But let's go ahead and continue with this story. So the cosmetics are used, and of course, when it's finished, it either ends up in a landfill. That would be the dump truck that you see. And of course, when we go ahead and put things into a landfill, that is our biggest source of methane. And this is a depiction of methane. But of course, it doesn't just go there. There's possibility that the cosmetics might end up getting burnt, which means that, okay, so great, we were able to burn it, so we create energy. That would be the lightning rod over to the right-hand side. But have we ever thought that there are ashes and perhaps some other debris that's coming from the burning that we don't quite capture? And then there's this wonderful energy that we actually put into our disposal every once in a while, and it's called wind. And the wind could actually go ahead and blow it into a lake or a river. And voila, we have the same problem as we have with the tires. That would be one. So we either have the landfill or we actually go ahead and burn it. Not a pretty picture. So let's go ahead and concentrate on the one that might even be the biggest headache of all, because there are so many touch points for the microplastics to take place. And that would be with textiles. So we go ahead and produce the textiles. That alone is using energy, which is emitting CO2. But to treat the textiles, we need water. So that means right from the bat, we are creating microplastic. So it goes, we use the water, goes into, let's go ahead and stay with the river, and Bingo, it ends up as microplastic in the ocean. But we're not finished yet. So let's continue with this story. The textiles are made into clothes, and the clothes, of course, need to be washed. So we take them off the rack, we put them on, we put them in the washing machine. Bingo! Again, we are creating microplastics through washing the clothes. That goes into our rivers and again is deposited in the ocean. But of course, we're not done yet. And this is where the textiles become our triple threat. Either they are sent to the landfill that helps in creating the methane, or we go ahead and burn them, and then we follow that process as you see on your screen. Best case, we consider ourselves being very productive when we create energy this way, or very possibly it will be blown away and end up in a river. And of course, we know where it goes from there. And yeah, so that was a brief lesson as to what is actually going ahead and taking place.